Check this out. BCM Raider here, bringing you another Commander deck tech. Today we're looking at Obeka, Brute Chronologist. She's in the Grixis colors. She has a very unique activated ability that we're going to utilize in many different ways. Because when you activate Obeka, you're going to end the turn. And what that is going to do for us is if there's any kind of negative effect, Obeka's ability will end the stack. So all those negative triggers will go away. So we're going to utilize this in many different ways. So let's get right into it. First up are the enchantments. So we're going to be running Sneak Attack. And Sneak Attack is going to help us put very large, powerful creatures on the battlefield with haste that we're going to utilize. But it does have this negative thing where you have to sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step. But because of Obeka's ability, we're going to end the stack, and that sacrifice is going to go away. So we get to keep the creature in play for 1 mana. Now we have Psychic Vortex. This has a cumulative upkeep of drawing a card. That's a very high upside. But the downside is at the beginning of each end step, we have to sacrifice a land and discard our hand. But we're not going to be doing that because of Obeka's ability. Now we have Mystic Remora. This is just a early game. We're going to draw more cards whenever our opponents cast non-creature spells. Now we have Flame Shadow Conjuring. This is going to help us create token copies of whatever non-token creature enters the battlefield. So we can activate Sneak Attack to put in a very large creature. It'll gain haste, and when that creature does, we can pay 1 more red mana and make a token copy of it. Okay, let's get into the creatures. Because we're playing Sneak Attack, here's Perforos, Bronze-Blooded. This is another Sneak Attack effect, but Perforos is going to give all our other creatures haste. And that's going to be really beneficial for us. But the Sneak Attack part is only for red creatures. Okay, now we have Ilharg, the Razeboar. This is another Sneak Attack-like effect, but only when Ilharg, the Razeboar, attacks. And if we give this creature haste with Perforos, we're going to be putting Ilharg and another very large creature on the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Now we have Identity Thief. This is going to be fun because whenever Identity Thief attacks, we get to exile another non-token creature. And if we do, Identity Thief will become an exact copy of it. But we have to return the exiled creature back to the battlefield under its owner's control. Now we have Spark Double. Spark Double is going to be really fun because we're going to be making another copy of whatever creature we want. So we have Rionia Fire Dancer. This is going to trigger every single beginning of combat. We're going to create a X number of tokens, where X is the number of instants and sorceries we cast previous to combat. They're going to gain haste, and we exile them at the beginning of the next end step. But because of Obeka, we're going to keep those tokens. Now we have Orthorion, Hero of Lavabrink. This one has 2 different activated abilities, and they both create token copies of whatever creatures we want. The first one will create a single token copy, and the second one will create 5 tokens, and we're going to keep all of them. Now we have Felden of the Third Path. This is going to create a token copy, but from our graveyard. Now we have Grixis the Troublemaker. We're going to discard cards to make token copies of whatever creature we want. Now we have Mishra, Eminent One. This is going to create a token copy of a non-creature artifact we control. So we can turn our Soul Rings or Mana Rocks into 4/4 construct creatures. Now we have Hellkite Courser. When Hellkite Courser enters the battlefield, if our opponents dealt with Obeka, we can continually keep bringing Obeka back to the battlefield with haste. Now we have Avaricious Dragon. He's going to help us draw many cards, but he does have the negative thing where we have to discard our hand. Now we have some creatures that are going to deal with our opponents. So we have Grief. That way we can pick apart our opponent's hand. Now we have Amphin Mutineer. This is going to exile a opponent's creature and turn it into a 4/3 salamander. Now we have Zara, Renegade Recruiter. This one's really fun. All we have to do is attack with Zara. We get to look at our opponent's hand, and we get to steal a creature card and put it on the battlefield under our control. And if we've killed off some of our opponent's creatures, we have Puppeteer Click. Now we have Cedrus, the Traitor King. This is going to give every single creature in our graveyard unearth, so we can keep bringing that creature back from our graveyard for only 3 mana. Now we have Archaeomancer. This is going to be very beneficial for us because when Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, we get to return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard back to our hand. And the ones we're running are pretty much just extra turn spells. Now we have Fate Stitcher. We're going to use Fate Stitcher to continually untap creatures that have very powerful activated abilities. Let's get into the very, very large creatures that we're going to be either reanimating or putting directly onto the battlefield with our many sneak attack. So first we have Cityscape Leveler. Just when Cityscape Leveler attacks, we're going to destroy one target non-land permanent, and they create a Power Stone token. Now we have It That Betrays. This is a insane magic card. It has Annihilator 2, so whenever this creature attacks, they have to sacrifice however many the Annihilator number is. But whenever a opponent sacrifices any non-token permanent, it's going to be returned to the battlefield under our control. Now we have Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. Just when we cast Kozilek, we get to draw 4 cards, but it's a 12/12 with Annihilator 4. And if this would be put into a graveyard, it's going to shuffle our entire graveyard back in. Now we have Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Just when Ulamog attacks, we're going to exile the top 20 cards of their library. And that's absolutely devastating. Now we have Ancient Copper Dragon. If we get to connect with this card, we're going to make a ridiculous amount of treasure tokens. Now we have Agent of Treachery. When Agent of Treachery enters the battlefield, we're going to gain control of any permanent we want. And if we're making a bunch of copies of Agent of Treachery, every single end step, we get to draw 3 cards. But you got to be careful with this because this end step trigger will go on the stack as well. So if you're using Obeka, you won't draw the cards. Now we have Archon of Cruelty. This is always a fun reanimator target. Just when Archon enters the battlefield and attacks, target opponent is going to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, discard a card, and lose 3 life. You're going to draw a card and gain 3. Now we have Rune Scar Demon. This is a demonic tutor with legs. Okay, let's get into the artifacts. First up is Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Izzet Signet, Dimir Signet, Rakdos Signet, Talisman of Indulgence, Talisman of Dominance, Talisman of Creativity. We are running a lot of mana rocks because most of what we're doing is kind of higher costed, so we need as much mana as possible. Now we have Lightning Greaves. That way we can protect Obeka or some other creature that we need. Okay, now we have Sundial of the Infinite. This is the card that Obeka Brute Chronologist was inspired by, because it has the exact same activated ability of ending the turn. Now we have Whip of Erebos. This is going to be very powerful for us because all our creatures are going to have lifelink. This is going to give us access to returning creatures from our graveyard. But you have to be kind of careful with this because if you return a creature with Whip of Erebos, if that creature leaves the battlefield, it gets exiled no matter what. And Obeka's ability won't be able to save it. Now we have Urabrass Forge. This is going to be really fun because this is going to scale every single turn by putting oil counters on the forge, and it's going to generate a X1 token every single turn. Now we have Minion Reflector. This is going to be fun because whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, we can pay 2 mana, and if we do, we're going to make an exact copy of it. Okay, now we have Mimic Vat. This has imprint, so whenever a non-token creature goes to the graveyard, we can exile that creature card with Mimic Vat, and when we do, all we have to do is pay 3, activate the Mimic Vat, and we're going to create an exact token copy of the exiled card. Let's get into the instance. We're running Brainstorm, Factor Fiction, Frantic Search. We're going to use these to draw as many cards as possible. That way we can get to the spells we really need to. Now we have Quicken. We're going to use Quicken because most of the extra turn spells are sorceries. So we can instant speed, take more turns, or deal with our opponent's stuff when they least expect us to. Now we have Glorious End. This is going to be fun because we're going to use this on our opponents during their upkeep. That way we can just single-handedly end their turn and then go directly to our turn. But you got to be careful because at the beginning of that next end step, we lose the game. But we're not going to lose the game because of Obeka's activated ability. Now we have Chaos Warp. That way we can deal with any permanent our opponent controls, or we can hopefully kind of gamble and try to get out a better permanent on our side. Now we have Final Fortune. This is one of the extra turn spells, and we're playing a pretty decent amount of extra turn spells. That way we can keep doing crazy big dumb things. Now we have Nexus of Fate. What's really fun about Nexus of Fate is the fact it'll continually shuffle itself back in your library. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. We have Faithless Looting. We have Cathartic Reunion. Now we have Ideas Unbound. For 2 mana, we're going to draw 3 cards. This is the closest thing to Ancestral Recall that you can effectively run. But at the end step, we're going to have to discard 3 cards. That may not always be a bad thing, because if you don't want to discard 3 cards, just activate Obeka. But if there's 3 cards you need in your graveyard, you can do that as well. Now we have Windfall, because the whole premise is getting to these very large spells as quickly as possible. Now we have Last Chance as another extra turn spell. And all these extra turn spells have the same negative outcome. At the beginning of the end step, you lose the game. But because of Obeka, we're not going to lose the game. We're just going to keep taking more turns. Now we have Warrior's Oath. Alchemist Gambit. It does have a alternate cost as the Cleave. For 7 mana, you remove the lose the game aspect of it. But we're going to cast this for 3 mana because we have Obeka. Now, to deal with our opponent's stuff, we have Blasphemous Act. Void Walk. Void Walk is going to be really fun because we can just keep exiling creatures and they're not going to get their creatures back. And if our opponents have lots of artifacts, we're just going to blow them up with Vandal Blast. Okay, we are running one singular Planeswalker, and that's Narset, Parter of Veils. She's primarily here just to look for all these non-creature, non-land cards. Because we're playing Windfall, it's going to really hinder our opponents from drawing additional cards to deal with what we're trying to do. Okay, let's get into the land base. We are running Command Tower, Mana Confluence, Reflecting Pool. We're running Scalding Tarn, Polluted Delta, and we have Bloodstained Mire. Now, we need all the lands we're going to go get with these fetch lands. So we have Xander's Lounge, Steam Vents, Watery Grave, Blood Crypt, Rausch's Theater, Thundering Falls, and Undercity Sewers. These Surveil lands are very, very powerful. Now we have our Battle Bond lands with Morphic Pool, Luxury Suite, Training Center. Now we have our check lands with Sulphur Falls, Drowned Catacomb, Dragon Skull Summit. Now we have our filter lands with Graven Cairns, Cascade Bluffs, and Sunken Ruins. Now we have our fast lands with Darkslick Shores, Black Cleave Cliffs, and Spire Bluff Canal. Now we have our pain lands with Shivan Reef, Sulphurous Springs, and Underground River. Now we have Rakdos Carnarium, Is It Boilerworks, and Demir Aqueduct. What's actually really fun about these Haru lands is if we have Obeka, we can put the return a land we control when that land enters on the stack, and we can just end the turn, and we can get a land that taps for 2 mana very early in the game. Similar to that, we have Lotus Field. When Lotus Field enters, we have to sacrifice 2 lands. So we can put that trigger on the stack as well and activate Obeka. And we don't have to sacrifice anything. Then we have a hexproof land that taps for 3 of one color. And that's really powerful very early in the game. Now, to protect any of our legendary creatures, we have Plaza of Heroes. And we have 1 of each basic. So we have 1 island, 1 mountain, and 1 swamp. Was the commander deck tech for Obeka, Brute Chronologist. I really hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech. This is a very fun deck to play. It's a very powerful deck. So if there's some kind of interaction or something I missed, let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from everybody. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on TikTok, share these videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.